New at 6 now, fighting to get back on the ballot.
Mike Duggan is with us now to talk about his decision to appeal yesterday's court ruling to remove him from the race for Detroit mayor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Let's talk about this. April 2nd, you filed. April 16th is when you took residency, or when that would take effect, and May 14th was the deadline. Why didn't you just wait 2 more weeks? Everything would have been okay.
Because the law, as we understand it, as the clerk understands it, as the city law department understands it, is that you had to be a resident a year ahead of the filing deadline, which was May 14th. I moved in April 16th of 2012. We were fully aware of it. I was in 13 months early.
So you got some bad information.
I don't believe we got any bad information. I think it was the correct information.
You believe it's the intent of the charter, correct? Because the wording in the charter is pretty clear, and I heard you talking about in your press conference this morning that it says, you know, a year of living there, but you're saying that the intent is a year of the filing deadline.
Right. All you have to do is look at the commentary, which indicates they want you to reside there a year, which is why people like the dean of the Wayne State Law School, Jocelyn Benson, says the argument to remove me is nonsense, and Freeman Hendricks, who was chair of the Charter Commission, says it's nonsense, that it clearly was intended to be the deadline. I moved in 13 months ahead of the deadline. Mr. Barrow's argument is, when I walked into the clerk's office on April 2nd, the clerk should have said to me, bring the petitions back 2 weeks later on April 16th and everything would have been fine. Of course, the clerk didn't interpret it that way. Nobody has interpreted it that way except one judge.
Well, and let me ask you, because Tom Barrow, you seem very confident in the success that you'll have with the appeal. I just want to run a soundbite from what mayoral candidate Tom Barrow, who brought this challenge, had to say today. Listen to him.
It doesn't make any difference whether he appeals to the state courts, to the World Court at The Hague, or even to Captain Kirk's United Federation of Planets. It's not going to change because the decision was rooted in the case law. It addressed each of their lawyers' arguments, and the language is very clear and the statutes are very clear. So we understand it, but there's not going to be a change. And quite frankly, I believe this is going to be divisive, him just dragging this out rather than accept the inevitable.
You don't think that's inevitable, obviously.
Tom Barrow is still claiming that Dave Bing stole the 2009 election from him by sneaking in and stealing 40,000 absentee ballots, which he sued on and claimed he was going to win that case.
But
so
Mike,
we don't put a lot of stock in that.
You have a judge that has ruled otherwise. So let's talk about that. What might come into question now is people might think, well, do you have the ability to run a city with numbers and deadlines and all that sort of stuff if you can't meet your own filing deadline?
We did meet the filing deadline. The Election Commission, which is in charge of making that decision, which includes the city law department and the city clerk, ruled I did make the deadline. Every election lawyer who has looked at this said I make the deadline, and the Court of Appeals is going to rule promptly. But we did this very consciously. If anybody had said to me, bring your petitions back 2 weeks later, the problem is I didn't make the deadline. They're saying I filed 2 weeks early.
Okay, so if this goes south and you can't overcome this, are you going to go with a write-in campaign? What's your next step?
Again, the Court of Appeals just set noon tomorrow for Barrow's response. I think the appellate court's going to deal with it promptly, and we're staying focused on that. The campaign hasn't slowed down at all.
You're still fundraising?
Oh yeah, in fact the fundraising seems to have picked up. People are really angry. They think the voters ought to decide the mayor, not these legal shenanigans.
Well, we appreciate you stopping by and talking to us. Mike Duggan, thanks for being with us tonight.
Best of luck to you.